Welcome to On the Books. I'm Ted Callahan.
And I'm Jessica McCracken. And today we are once again in the same room. For you, we have a special crossover episode. This is On the Books meets Intuit Connect ON. We've heard that you love hearing from your peers about what they face while running a firm, their technology, and how they look at growth in an ever-changing world. Who do we have here with us today, Ted?
I'm so excited, Jess. Today we've got none other than Dave Olsen, the founder of Nimbl. Dave started with a background like many of our community at the Big Four. And then he and a co-founder started Nimbl. And what I love about Dave's story for all our listeners is that Dave's literally gone through every stage of firm growth, from early days of startup to figuring out how to make that first hire, how to make the decision to offshore or nearshore, and then growing and scaling a team with really giving all of the key functions away so that you can stay focused on the people, Dave. So really, really excited to dive into all of that. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Dave, before we get into Nimbl's story, you've got a really interesting background. You started in a tech-adjacent field before you founded Nimbl. Would love to hear a little bit about your career story that led to the origin of Nimbl.
I identify more as a technologist and a systems builder than I do an accountant. I don't know if the accounting community would want to hear that, but I actually went to BYU in the late 90s planning to do accounting. So that was kind of in my roots, my foundation. But then when I got to BYU, I discovered technology and fell in love and switched my major to information systems and studied that, worked as a software developer during college, and then found my way back into accounting when, in the middle of the Sarbanes-Oxley craze in the mid-2000s, Big Four was recruiting for all kinds of positions. So I actually went into IT audit and got my master's in accounting and CPA through the Big Four, rotated into financial audit. So I got to see both sides of the IT and finance. And a couple things really shaped me in that. One was seeing how antiquated and manual a lot of the accounting systems were. So working with audit teams and seeing how inefficient a lot of the processes were, and then seeing how the internal finance departments worked. There's just so much opportunity to introduce technology in that area. And so that, just really shaped the opportunity that I saw to merge the two worlds of technology and accounting back 20 years ago.
Amazing. And then I believe it was a conversation that you had with a mentor or somebody that kind of gave you a challenge, right? That led to the formation of Nimbl. So unpack the origin story, if you would.
The mentor you mentioned was in 2017, and he was actually a prospective client. He's an executive coach and was looking for a bookkeeper and CFO type work for his practice. And I sat down with him, and he ended up asking me a lot about my business and my plans and my goals. And I started opening up to him and sharing this dilemma that I had, that I see so much opportunity, but I wasn't sure where to go with it. And part of that was young family at the time. And I thought the concept I had was bigger business meant more work, more responsibility, neglecting my family, and that kind of thing. And that mentor, in one moment, I must have just been ready to hear it. He looked at me and said, well, why can't you have both? And that really hit me deep, that, why can't I build a bigger business, have bigger impact, and still have a great lifestyle with my family? And that led to starting Nimbl just a few months later, and the journey we've had since.
Nimbl has experienced periods where you've grown rapidly, grown significantly. For people who are out there who are just starting a firm, we all know there's smooth patches, there's rough patches. These things happen. What are a few of the key growth moments you had? Either good ones where it's like, wow, we're doing this right, or the other side, ooh, this is a little painful, it's a little sharp.
Yeah, definitely a lot of painful moments and lessons learned, very expensive mistakes. There's a few key turning points and pivot points that really made a difference. One is even before I had really hired anyone, was in that mid-2010s I mentioned, where online software became more prevalent and allowed me to provide virtual services and build a virtual team, which enabled and starting to build an offshore team. That really opened my eyes to what was possible at scale. And then in 2018 was when I, just soon after this mentor that I talked about, I hired my first US employee. And that allowed me to start to transition myself out of client work. And that was a huge unlock for me, because then I could focus on leading and building a business, not just doing the client work. And then, but I was doing all the sales at the time. And so the next pivot point was I brought in a partner who was very sales focused, and that first worked myself out of client work, then got myself out of sales, but I was still leading client delivery. So my partner was focused on sales. I was focused on client delivery. And then soon after that, the huge pivot point was putting a leadership team in place. So once we had leaders responsible for each one of the major functions, the sales, the service delivery, internal operations, that's kind of when we started to feel like a real company, when we had that team in place.
I'm curious, how big were you when you made that move in terms of handing off sales, then handing off the client delivery, just to help our listeners kind of size it?
Yeah, good question. Just approximately, it was about $1.5 million when my partner came in to handle some of the sales, and then it was probably about $3 million when we had our leadership team in place. Just speaking in rough terms.
Do you think that like culture of learning and development is something that is it in all of Nimbl, or is that something that's like really personal to you?
I'd say I've intentionally, and our leadership team has really intentionally instilled that into the culture. One of the surprising aspects to me, coming from such an analytical, technical background, was by far my single most rewarding aspect of building Nimbl has been seeing people learn and develop. And one reason that is for me, because I see them as they start seeing themselves as a leader and someone who can really make a difference in a business, somehow magically it translates to other areas of their life. So all of a sudden their family life is better, their health is better, and that just whole person kind of comes out of increasing their leadership and their confidence in business.
Just thinking about how fundamental technology has been in your journey, starting as you did, right, and kind of IT audit, and then making this move into accounting, you've really successfully bridged technology and accounting. And I think a lot of our community today is really grappling with the pace of change has accelerated with AI in ways that I don't think people knew it was coming. People didn't think it was coming in 2025 and 2026. I'd love for you to talk about, what are some specific areas, this is a very practical bunch. What are some specific areas where you're deploying technology that you're excited about? And then I'd love to have a follow-up on the leadership implications for you and your firm. So let's start with What are those technology advancements that you've really seen move the needle for Nimbl?
Yeah, first I'll say we're taking a very measured approach. We're not jumping on every shiny object that comes along. We're not panicking about everybody losing their jobs. I mean, it's the technological change has been happening for years. I mean, like I said, in the mid-2010s, we had online software come along, and it's been many years in the works, and it does feel like it's accelerating, and in a lot of ways it has. But it's also not going to change everything overnight, despite what the hype cycles say. And so we're taking our approach is wide experimentation and narrow adoption. And an example that we deployed in our business was ChatGPT. We recognize that everyone's going to be using some version of it anyway, and so we better introduce something that's going to be secure and consistent across the team. And so we had our leadership team try it and see how that impacted our workflows and our daily work. And then we had next level leadership, and then we rolled it out to our US team and our offshore team. So we took a very measured approach in both the impact of the distraction, the potential for distraction for people, and also the cost of it, and rolled it out slowly. And it's really helpful with platforms like Intuit and QuickBooks, where the tools it's a tool we've already adopted, and then we get new features like AI features added and other parts of the platform come in. Then we don't need to go through a whole implementation of a new tool. All we have to do is look at and learn the new features. So that's been really helpful.
Beyond just like, we all know AI is coming for things like basic automation, categorization, and that sort of work that most people don't enjoy doing anyway. Like, I don't know anyone that's like, I want to have a good time tonight. I'm going to go through a bank register and click on the next button. What else do you see coming for accounting that AI or any of the new technologies are really going to fundamentally progress into a different stage?
Yeah, I see some trends. One is consolidation of tools. I mean, we're seeing that with the Intuit platform and bringing a lot of back office functions together, and then introducing AI to that and the human element. In the accounting industry, we have a lot of tech stack fatigue, and we just have so many tools. I don't know I hear different numbers about what the typical firm has. We're between like 20 and 50 different tools. Yep. It's one of the most prominent areas of feedback we get when we onboard a new employee is we love working here, we love everything, but almost everything, but there's just so many tools, and it takes so long to learn and be comfortable with what do we use and where. And so the more that tech stack can be consolidated, the helpful it is for team experience and effectiveness. So I see that trend coming. I'd like to see that continue.
We had our CEO Sasan on a recent episode of On the Books, and he, I thought, did a wonderful job of really unpacking our strategy of what we think makes our system of intelligence truly that it's AI plus HI, where HI is human intelligence. And there's a great quote that we've heard you say, which is technology makes it possible, but people make it meaningful. And so again, right, just for our community here that's really, I hope, enjoying everything that we're talking about here, I'd love for you to talk about what are the human skills that you're focused on developing in your team and what you think would really be relevant for anybody, regardless if they're a sole prop, partnership, or a firm like yourself. Like, what are those key skills you're honing in on?
Yeah, we put a lot of thought into that, especially as technology has advanced. I feel like we swung the pendulum a little bit too far in automation and process, and that's kind of how I was oriented towards being that technologist, the systems builder. But I realized we had pivoted too far, or swung that pendulum a little bit too far, and we'd been neglecting the client experience for a while. And so it was a year or two ago, we got really intentional about what do we want our client experience to look like, and what of those human elements do we want to instill in our team. And we came up with our client experience framework. And those three things were responsiveness, discovering and adding value, and then keeping agreements. And I feel like those three kind of human interaction and service principles solve almost everything.
Okay.
In the accounting industry is notorious, I think, for not being great at those things. We hear a lot that my accountant's not responsive. I can't get a word back. So simply being responsive, it can go a huge way. And then also discovering and adding value. Like, what does the client really want? And let's deliver that. And like, you can be in the middle of a bank rec and you're looking for that $10 that you can't quite miss, you can't quite find. And the client sends an email. What's going to be more valuable to them? Responding quickly with a helpful answer, or finding that $10? They're not going to care about that $10. They want that human touch. They want that responsiveness to know they're taken care of. And then another thing that's really fundamental is, and that's one of our core virtues, is integrity. Like, just being our word, doing what we'll say we're going to do. And the term we use for that is agreements. Like, keep agreements. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Do what you said you'd do when you say you do it by. And if something comes up that makes it impossible, address it right away. Don't leave people wondering and apologize after. So I think those three things, if our team and all of us as in the industry can really embody those, I think it'd be go a long way in adding that human layer on top of the technology.
Dave, I've heard you talk about confidence. And I think in our own AI research, what we've seen when small businesses, mid-market businesses go to like a chat, go to a conversational AI tool, they can get numbers spit out for sure. That's what they do very well. But what we see with business owners is they still have that analysis paralysis. Am I making the right choice? And that's where humans do a great job. So you've talked about confidence. We know that for a client to confidently make a decision, they have to feel like it's the right decision. How do you train your team on figuring out how to instill confidence in clients? Because that's such a niche.
It is. It is challenging to train. But what we've attempted to train our team on is being confident themselves.
Okay.
Instills confidence in the client. And one way we talk about that is to not put pressure on ourselves to know all the answers in the moment. The confidence comes in knowing that we can listen, we can be present, and then we can find the answers if we don't know it in the moment. But when we're in our head about, I need to know all the answers, I need to prepare extensively beforehand just so I can answer any possible question, and I get frozen in the moment because I don't know the answer, and I feel like I'm not an expert if I don't know. No, just let all that go. Be confident that I am the type of person who can make a difference to this client. I can serve them, I can help them be confident, and we'll figure it out. And I think that takes a lot of pressure away, and it helps the client.
I love the dual focus of be the forefront of technology and be just a real human. Like, that's kind of what I've gotten from a lot of this. It's just like enabling your teams to be who they are. Dave, you are here in Mountain View, Building 20. It's a big one, on campus where the magic happens. When you look forward to the future, the things you've learned about, the things you saw at Connect as well back in Las Vegas in October, what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to?
A big opportunity for Nimbl is to move up market. We've been focused on the 1 to 10 million demographic, and there's huge opportunities to go up market. And so I'm excited about Enterprise Suite and what that will enable. I've been talking to the team about utilizing it within Nimbl. We have multi products and multi entities within Nimbl, and we'd love to test it internally, and then be able to serve larger clients through that suite.
I think we could probably sneak you upstairs to the mid-market team. They'd be excited.
Okay, let's do it.
Dave, we've got a lot of folks who are in the early stages of growing their firm or trying to decide if they're making the jump to growing a firm. If you've got a young leader sitting in front of you and they walk up to you at Intuit Connect and they're like, Dave, I just want to know like top 2-3 things. What do I need to focus on? What would you tell them?
Yeah. This may sound a little woo-woo, but it made a huge difference to me, especially as I worked with that mentor you mentioned and executive coaches, to see yourself as a leader, to see yourself as someone who is capable of building a business. And it may sound simple, but I don't think it's trivial for a lot of technicians and practitioners. I think we see ourselves as really good at the work. We understand the rules and the processes in accounting, but do we see ourselves as someone who can really build and lead a team? And without believing that's possible, there's nowhere to go from there. And again, it sounds trite, but I think it's critical. And then being intentional about developing those skills that go along with leading people. The skill set of building a team is very different than the skill set of doing accounting, and embrace that difference. I would say make peace with sales and marketing. Again, I think a lot of technicians may not love the idea of sales and marketing, and that's actually one reason I didn't want to progress in the Big Four, is because I thought partner meant sales. I don't want to do sales, so I'm not going to go that route. I was a few years into building the company and selling a lot before I realized, I was actually selling.
Fundamental. Yeah.
Yeah. All I was doing was I'd get a referral and I'd tell them what I do and how I could help. And I didn't realize I was actually selling. And it's as simple as that. Just sharing what you do, being confident in the impact you can have. And that's sales. I think gone are the days when a solo operator can hang up a shingle and the clients are going to flock to them. It's going to take intention to attract clients. So sales and marketing. Third one is to build a system, not just a kind of ad hoc set of serving a client. It's easy for, say, a solo practitioner to be ad hoc because they know what to do. Anything comes in, they can just do it. Yeah. But to grow and to build, it actually has to be a system. It can't be ad hoc beyond 1 or 2 or 3 people. You got to have a system for delivering the service, a system for bringing in clients, a system for running the internal operations, and see themselves as builders of a system, not as like an operator within that system. So.
And then to bring us home, it's just been awesome having you. Thank you so much for coming in and being together. If you think about what's the one message you'd love for this community to hear from you, everything that's going on, all of the change, all of the uncertainty, all of the opportunity, what would be your words of wisdom or just your perspective in this time for them?
Say stay calm. Yeah, don't get caught up in the hype cycle. The world is changing, but it's not changing as fast as the media says. And humans aren't going to change. And so keep focusing on the humans. Be aware of the technology, but don't chase shiny objects. Just be calm and everything will be okay.
Dave, thank you so much for taking some time with us. That was a great conversation. I will be thinking about progression, not change, as I go forward into tomorrow and beyond.
Working on your skiing and your CrossFitting, progressing. Can see that already happening, Jess.
We are getting close to testing week, so we're going to be hitting numbers soon.
Love that. And Dave, just thank you so much for joining us and sharing what I would truly call wisdom. I'm going to take away the idea of experimenting wide, but being really narrow with implementation as just a really clear call to action for our internal teams. And then I loved your focus on great client service as a way of keeping yourself and your team calm amidst all of the change. And it's about the fundamentals, right? Being responsive, discovering, right? Savoring the opportunity for surprise with the client to make sure you're really solving what they need. And then finally, never letting the team off the hook in terms of just great delivery of the client service and the work that they need. So thank you so much for being with us. It's always an opportunity to learn and a pleasure to have you here.
You're welcome. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this special crossover episode. On the Books meets Intuit Connect On. On the Books will be back in your podcast feed wherever you listen to podcasts in just a short couple weeks. And to stay tuned for the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Intuit Accountants on whichever platform you would like.